will stand with you.
Hungary's Viktor Orban is shaking up the European Union, pushing against its united stance on Ukraine and sparking talk of a coalition of the willing. At the same time, divisions within Nato are becoming more apparent, exposing nations that are hesitant in their support for Kyiv as Russia's war continues. Across Brussels, London and beyond, the fractures in Western unity are deepening, setting the stage for a high-stakes political showdown. Here's how it started. Last week, Orban fired off a letter to European Council President Antonio Costa, urging the EU to scrap its joint support plan for Ukraine. Forget solidarity. He wants direct talks with Moscow, taking a page from Donald Trump's playbook after the US president's clash with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky. On March 1st, Orban praised Trump, saying, "Strong men make peace, weak men make war." A dig at EU leaders like France's Emmanuel Macron and Germany's Olaf Scholz, who demand Ukraine's voice in any deal. With a Brussels summit set for March the 6th, Orban's threatening to veto aid, frustrating the bloc's push for unity.
I am convinced that the European Union, following the example of the United States, should enter into direct discussions with Russia on a ceasefire and sustainable peace in Ukraine.
That's where the coalition of the willing kicks in. On March 2nd, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosted 18 leaders in London, hammering out a peace plan to pitch to the US, France and Ukraine signed on, with Germany, Denmark and others in talks. Starmer promised boots on the ground and planes in the air to enforce a ceasefire, bypassing EU gridlock. Orban's not calling for this himself, but his obstruction is forcing the shift, as Europe's heavy hitters look to act fast. Across the Atlantic, NATO's feeling the strain too. Since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, most of its 31 members have sent weapons, cash and support, but not everyone's on board. Hungary's the loudest holdout. Orban's refused lethal aid, blocked EU funds, and last month called Ukraine's NATO bid a buffer zone fantasy that risks war.
The war, in fact, is not even about Ukraine, but about the territory called Ukraine, which until now has been a buffer zone, a buffer state between NATO and Russia, being placed under the auspices of NATO. Why European and American liberals thought the Russians would watch this idly is still a mystery. It is already clear that the experiment failed. Ukraine, or what remains of it, will again become a buffer zone. It will not be a NATO member. Will it be a member of the European Union? That will be decided by the Hungarians. Against the will of Hungary and the Hungarians, Ukraine will never be a member of the European Union.
Slovakia's followed suit under Prime Minister Robert Fico, who's ditched arms shipments and on March 1st demanded Ukraine restart Russian gas flows to his country.
I have serious objections to the conclusions about Ukraine. These do not take into account the military reality at all, but only confirm that the vast majority of member states of the European Union wish to continue the war in Ukraine, i.e., massive, mutual and senseless killing of Slovaks. In conclusion, there is an unrealistic strategy, a measure of mediation of force, under which Ukraine must be the strongest when negotiating the measures. Therefore, the European Union is committed to continue in the extensive political, financial, economic, humanitarian, military and diplomatic support of Ukraine.
Serbia's in the mix too. President Aleksandar Vučić backs Ukraine's territorial integrity but won't sanction Russia, balancing ties with Moscow over Kosovo and energy. Turkey's trickier. President Erdogan sold drones to Ukraine, but dodged sanctions on Russia, keeping trade flowing. Bulgaria's pro-Russian factions and Croatia's cautious president have also wavered, though their governments toe the line. Compare that to the US, UK, and Poland, doubling down with more aid pledges at the London summit. NATO's chief Mark Rutte insisted on March 2nd the alliance is solid, but Hungary and Slovakia's defiance is testing that claim.
What we also see is European countries really ramping up to help with security guarantees for the moment when a peace deal would be struck. Obviously there is no deal yet, there is no ceasefire yet, but we have to prepare for that moment and making sure that European countries are willing to help out with the security guarantees, and here I really saw quite a number of countries at this table. Of course, the initiative being taken by the United Kingdom and France, but others wanting to help you.
So what's driving this divide? In Hungary, it's Orban's nationalist streak and cozy Moscow ties. Cheap Russian gas keeps his economy humming. Slovakia's Fico leans on populism and an energy crunch. Russian gas cuts hit hard last year. Turkey's playing a longer game. Erdogan wants Black Sea clout and a mediator's badge, not a frontline fight. On the flip side, the UK and France see Ukraine as a stand against Putin's ambitions. At the London summit, Starmer warned inaction isn't an option, a shot at the dissenters. Analysts say this could redraw Europe's security map, with coalitions stepping up where alliances stall.
Through my discussions over recent days, we've agreed that the UK, France and others will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting. Then we'll discuss that plan with the United States and take it forward together. The purpose of today's meeting was to unite our partners around this effort, to strengthen Ukraine and to support a just and enduring peace for the good of all of us. Our starting point must be to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position now, so that they can negotiate from a position of strength, and we are doubling down in our support.
As the Brussels summit nears and Trump's influence looms, Europe's unity is fraying. Orban's gambit might just birth a leaner coalition to carry Ukraine's cause, while NATO wrestles with its outliers. For Kyiv, caught in the crossfire, the stakes couldn't be higher. This is a story of fracture, and what comes next could shape the West for years.